This session is being recorded. First of all, let me congratulate the graduating class of 2020. Very exciting. Long 4 years of your hard labor is coming to a logical conclusion. But at the same time, we all recognize, it could be a little nervousness inside you, given the situation that we are all in. And as you can see, one of the panelists is already, kind of showing what it takes even to be on doing an online meeting in a place where there are other people. So these are uncertain times, and I have my own son who's graduating this year. So I can totally understand the mixed emotions that everybody is going through. And there cannot be a more topical subject, at least for this hour. What would it take to get hired in this new normal? And we are going to talk about what is new and why things are changing. We have a very esteemed panel of experts here. They've all lived their own uncertain times, and they have come out very successful. And there is a reason they are going to be addressing all of us today. And we are going to make sure that we have maximized everyone's time. So what I'm going to suggest is please use the Q&A feature of this webinar to ask the questions. We did receive a lot of questions from the attendees. And also we have been meeting a lot of students from other universities as well. So what we have done is we have created a pack of questions that we think are very topical and top on mind for all the students. So we are going to try and have the panelists answer some of those questions. But please do not hesitate to send us your questions through the Q&A feature of this webinar. So without much ado, let me get started. My name is Vivek Gupta. I'm based in the US. I've got 30 years of experience working across engineering consulting, financial services, industrial and technology companies. And I have seen both the sides of the interview process, as an interviewee and as an interviewer. And that's where I think today we want to know what helps, what hurts, and what can we do to become the best version of ourselves. Let me start by introducing the panelists. We have Bhuvan Mahajan. He is probably the youngest of the lot. He's an ISB graduate and a computer science engineer. More than 10 years of experience. He has got consulting, analytics, technology, and ed tech experience under his belt. And he has worked with companies like Hindustan Times, Monitor Consulting, and Girnar Soft. So he'll be taking some questions on behalf of the students today. We also have Aparna.
Thanks, Vivek.
We also have Aparna Kastgir. She's a very accomplished professional with more than 25 years of experience in HR and business development. She has worked with global organizations, a lot of them actually, like Target, Bank of America, Ansar. And she is a trained and a certified transformational coach, by the way. And she's been mentoring and coaching a lot of students globally, even not just in India, but in the US. So a perfect person to be here answering some of our questions. And then I'm very proud to also introduce Gaurav Sareen. Gaurav, he's the country director for India and SAARC for Sigfox, which is the largest communication services provider in the IoT domain, which is very happening at this time, Internet of Things. And now Gaurav comes with more than 20 years of experience in hardcore sales that have spanned multiple global organizations like Intel, Wipro, Cadence, to name some of them. So he will be on the hot seat as well, addressing all of our questions. And then we have the perfect person who's showcasing what this uncertain time really looks like, Winston De Rosario. He has more than 20 years of experience as well. He is helping multinationals and consulting companies like Accenture, EY, Grant Thornton. Right now, he's the HR head of Clover Ventures, which is an agri-tech startup. He's an IIM Bangalore graduate. And again, looking forward to hearing a lot in terms of what Winston has to offer for the students today. And then we have Pragya. Pragya Kumar, she's a senior HR leader. She comes with a lot of experience in public sector and the private domain. So she has worked in Steel Authority of India. She has worked in Yatra.com and also in Girnar Soft, all powerhouses in their own might. And her experiences are in manufacturing, IT, and e-commerce. So we'll have a lot of questions coming from Pragya, and she's an active campus recruiter. So she can actually share with us what is very topical today. So Pragya, we are looking forward to that. And then we have Geeta Khattar. Really proud in terms of what Geeta brings to the table. She is one of the very few experts in the country who uses neuroscience tools for building high-performance organizations. She's currently part of the global learning and development team at HCL. More than 16 years of experience in HR leadership. and has again worked with companies like Coca-Cola, Sony, and Philips. So really, again, a very powerful background and a stellar profile to help us in this
Thank you,
discussion
Vivek.
today.
Looking forward to the interactions and hope
Super.
our students gain something. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. And then, we will actually we'll keep looking at the Q&A section during this entire webinar, because I'm really keen to be able to answer what's specifically on the students' mind. And that's why we wanted to share the background of our panelists today, so that you can ask the questions, whether it is related to public sector domains, private sector, but most importantly, what would it take to get hired in the new normal? That's the important theme today. And we want to make sure that we walk away from this webinar feeling a little bit more secure, more aware that we have access to the resources that will help us get better and compete in this dog-eat-dog world, which is going to get even more intense given the job prospects are evolving at this point. Let me start with Bhuvan, who is I keep teasing him as our youngest of the lot with just 10 years of experience, right? But he comes with the ISB pedigree. He has switched, I think, 3 jobs in the last 10, 11 years. So Bhuvan, how will I get a job in this new world? Why is it new? What happened? And what do I need to do from now on? What would you tell the graduating students of 2020?
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks for the introduction, and really excited to be part of this panel. So what we are witnessing is definitely unprecedented. I think what is happening today, no one can claim they've ever seen something similar in their lifetime, right? This is perhaps the first time that a crisis has impacted every country, company, every individual. And if I talk specifically about the job prospects, yes, there have been job losses. Many companies have put hiring on an indefinite freeze. But I believe every such period of economic turmoil, while it closes a few doors, it also opens up many other opportunities. In fact, I graduated in 2008. That was the time when economic crisis, when the global financial crisis happened. And I think what some of the students today here are going through, we went through something very similar, right? We just graduated, didn't know, a lot of our offers got retracted. Some of us had to wait for a year before we landed up with a new job opportunity. But having said that, we saw that post 2008 financial crisis, a lot of product and digital jobs opened up, right? And this time we are already seeing a tremendous spurt in, adoption of technology such as e-healthcare, edtech, e-commerce. And companies working in these domains are definitely going to be hiring, and they're going to be hiring fast. In fact, I'm already witnessing this trend around me. So a few of my friends who are working in similar companies, who have their own startups in these domains, their organizations have already started hiring, right? So I believe if we persevere, if we stay positive, good opportunities are just around the corner, right? And in fact, once things become a bit more normal, I would say, I think that we are going to see a spurt in demand as well, and which means more jobs again. But coming to a specific question, how do I prepare for a job in this new normal? I would suggest they take a 3-pronged approach. First, focus on upskilling themselves. I think because of the pandemic, because we are at home, we have time to understand our strengths, our weaknesses, our interests, and accordingly, we should use this opportunity to learn functional or technical skills. So if I'm interested in HR, maybe do an online course about employee performance management, right? If I'm interested in analytics, learn R, Python, Tableau, some of these tools, right? So the students should utilize this time to upskill themselves. Second, they should go to the market with an open mind. They should be open to internships and freelance opportunities. Companies, while they're not actively hiring, a lot of these companies are passively looking for good talent. A lot of companies are offering internship opportunities. A lot of companies are offering freelance opportunities, right? So if the organization is good, or the role or the work is good, I think students should consider such opportunities with an open mind, and they can actually implement what they have learned in theory during their course during these opportunities. And lastly, I would suggest focus on softer skills as well. In the future, companies would want individuals who are not just strong on technical skills, but also bring a more well-rounded personality, who are more adaptable to such situations, who have got better interpersonal skills. We are already seeing that meetings are happening through virtual modes, which makes interpersonal skills even more important, right? So they should focus on giving more mock interviews. They should invest in learning how to communicate effectively, right? So to sum it up, use this time to make yourself better, both in the technical and the softer skill aspect, and most importantly, stay positive.
I think that's very well said, Bhuvan. Quick question that comes to my mind. As you talked about upskilling, as you talked about staying constantly engaged, how do I look for a job off campus? What resources are available?
Sure. Besides the traditional channels, like we all know there are job portals like Naukri.com, there's IMjobs, etc., right? And where companies keep constantly posting job opportunities. I think the second piece which becomes very critical in such times is networking, right? Create a better LinkedIn profile, reach out to people, reach out to your seniors, reach out to professionals and or your mentors who are working in similar domains where you're looking out for a job, and connect with them on a more personal note, right? You don't have to be very transactional in your nature. So learning networking also becomes very important, and I believe a lot of jobs in such times are going to come not just from the portals, but more from your first and second degree network.
I think that's a very important point, because in my life, I have had 3 mentors, and I have been all along 30 years, I have looked up to them. And if I recall now, at least 2 of my 4 roles that I have done came actually from the contacts and the coaches, because they networked me with some other people they knew in their circle of acquaintances, and that's how it progressed from one thing to the other. I also wanted to introduce a very special guest, and I'm also making sure that we have the screen working for all of us. We have a very special guest from New York, Anna Kostova. She's an investment banker. Hi, Anna. Thank you for joining. So she's an investment banker, comes with a lot of experience in this area. So she has been part of JP Morgan and some of the other boutique investment firms and financial services. So she will also be able to give us a global context in terms of what's happening in the employment scene at this point. So thank you, Anna, for joining.
Thank you. Apologies for the delay.
No, that's all right. So let me turn to Gaurav Serene. Gaurav, technology is a great leveler, right? Now you have got a lot of material available on YouTube, Google, and Quora. You talk about material at edX, Udemy, so many other places that are hosting a lot of good stuff for the students to use for enhancing their skills. Like Bhuvan was talking about, keep upskilling yourselves. If I'm a fresh entrant in the job market, how do I increase my chances of employability? What do I need to do to actually get the competitive edge over the other people who are actually vying for the same opportunity in a restricted job market?
So hi, can everybody hear me clearly though? I can hear some background noise. Just want to make sure that I'm audible to everyone. Okay.
Yes, you are, Gaurav. Please go ahead.
So first, Vivek, let me start off by thanking you for that rather unusual introduction. Hardcore salesperson sounded like a good title to carry, but I think all of us are salespeople, and this is something that I firmly believe, because right from our first interaction in a society with our peer group as we go to school, and then as we work through the school and the college years, and then finally on to a post-graduation, which requires more collaboration, teamwork. It's always adapting to the external environment, managing uncertainty, that sets us apart. I mean, we don't call ourselves or think of ourselves as sales guys, because that's considered to be peddling stuff. But I think sales is a very, very interesting way of life. Having said that, I think coming back to the question directly, and first of all, the class of 2020, you guys should be really excited. This is a civilizational, monumental time in all our lives. Not everybody is blessed to live through this time, and not everybody gets the kind of opportunities that lie on the other side of this chasm. So having said that, a long time ago when I when I was first starting out with enterprise sales and going in for customer discussions and meetings, I was told that there are three things that are important from any conversation that sets you apart with regards to competition, which is teach, tailor, and take control. So what that implies to somebody who's looking at it from a job perspective is that you have to be able to bring to the table a hypothesis of what the employer is looking for, which relies on your understanding of the employer's vision statement, having researched their business, their customer's business, if that's possible, and having prepared a hypothesis in your head before you go to that interview discussion and have an idea of what is it that you bring to the table. So that's the teaching, the teaching part that's important. Tailoring for resonance is also equally important, if not more. The reason being that your audience is all depending upon where and which function of the organization your audience comes from. There is a filter that is processing the information that you're giving them. So you have to tailor your message for resonance, right? So that the person, if it's a marketing person, you're speaking marketing language. And you're speaking KPIs that matter to marketing people, like customer satisfaction. If it is a salesperson, you're speaking quota, revenue targets, that language. If it's an engineering person, you're talking operational efficiencies and other metrics. But speaking the language is very important. So make sure that you research the job and you have mastered the language. And finally, take control of the conversation. And taking control of the conversation is not necessarily winning the discussion, but it is a very interactive process of actually bringing and adding value to the other person as you're going through that engagement process. So I think with that, you would definitely improve your employability quotient, and you would enhance your chances of getting noticed amongst a pool of candidates. So those are some things that I have found very, very handy and insightful through the years, Vivek.
Thank you. So one thing that comes to my mind, so if I'm a student, if I'm a graduating class of 2020, and Bhuvan alluded towards that earlier, was get coached, get mentored, connect with people. So when I'm trying to think about improving my employment quotient, if I am a fresh student from OP Jindal, who should I target to connect with? Should it be the leadership team? Should it be the hiring managers, the recruiters? What should I be thinking about? Or is it to some degree of all of the above?
I think my personal opinion is that I should be as prolific as possible. And, that means using whatever medium, whatever relationship, and whatever insights or inroads that I have into my target companies, right? So whether it's through LinkedIn, it's through direct email, reaching out to somebody that is in your network that can connect you with somebody, reaching out to somebody who already works with that company, but in a different function, who can refer you. But be prolific in terms of reaching out to people. But, like I said, it is important that you have to tailor your message for resonance depending on what you're seeking with each individual. And so that process comes through a continuous development cycle, which means that you can work through a mentor, you can work through somebody that is already there in your network that can, coach you through that process. But that's typically what I've seen work the best.
Okay. So thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for that insight. Let me turn to Geeta for the next question.
Yeah.
Now, Gaurav talked about connecting with everyone, being prolific in terms of how do we reach out. How do we start the process? Because the first thing that you do as a student, if I'm a fresh student out of class of 2020, my first introduction is through my resume, my CV, right? How should I think about as a student coming out of this class? How important is that CV? How important is the cover letter? What do you have to say to the students?
Yeah, thank you, Vivek, for that question, and glad to be connecting with OP Jindal students. Hope they really get some value add today. So yeah, I think while we are talking that the times have changed, but I think even with the changing times, the fundamentals remain same today. As you asked, even before I'm meeting my interviewer, my key document, which is my CV, is reaching my interviewer. So I definitely want to say that that's the most important document, which is representing you, right? So you need to be spending time on that document. You need to be really thoughtful about that document, what goes inside it. Few things which I want to mention out of my experience are, make sure, very basic, but make sure the templates which you are using, the fonts which you are using, the content which goes inside, that has to be, so three things: template, font, and content. Remember that. When I say content, very specific. Don't write stories onto it. Be very clear on what goes inside, in terms of, are you talking about specific metrics or you're writing stories. If, because you students, you are freshers right now, you may not have many highlights of your career, or you might have some summer campus projects to be mentioned about. So talk about specific highlights, something which you really did as a value add to the business. A brief about the project, brief about how it really helped the organization. Also, something which is very important, because nowadays organizations, they use applicant tracking system, right? Because there are loads of resume which come, and it's not really feasible for the interviewer to go through each and every document. So there are softwares to track the right fit. So whatever positions you are applying for, ensure that you have a track of what are the keywords for that position. For an example, if you have listed yourself on IM Jobs, it also gives you your magic sort ranking of your resume, if it is a right fit. So these things, as a student, make sure that right now have a right template, right font, right content. Talk about your core competencies. And when I say core competencies, here I want you to be mindful of important don'ts. Don't write for the heck of it. Don't write something which you don't believe you are. People at times copy paste. So make sure that you write what you believe in, what you are, because when you write correct, you are able to represent yourself correct, rather than just faking the stories. And honesty is always visible to the interviewer. So yeah, and don't load the resume with a lot of stories. So keep it very specific, avoid jargons. Don't copy the job description. At times people copy the job description. So these are few don'ts which I really want to highlight. And the document continues to be important. Also, before I close on, something which I want you to take away is, you as a student, you need to, in fact, everybody needs to continue focusing on ABCD, which will come as a, which will be helpful to you in your interview also, which is A stands for appearance, how you appear in front of your interviewer. B is your behavior, how you conduct your, specifically nowadays, maybe later on we could talk about, virtual interviewing skills. Typically, how do you present yourself? And C is your communication skills. How do you present your story? Even if, for that matter, if while you're talking, while your CVs, how your story is being shown in that. And last but not the least, which is your digital presence, which is like you are on the social platforms like LinkedIn and all, which is very important. And how do you represent your digital presence, your picture, your background, the content which has in it. So remember, you as ABCD, you should really work on that continuously. So that's my say on the entire thing. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, Geeta. That's very insightful. Quick question though. So I hear
Yeah.
that, and I know my own children, they're very fond of Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of posts from a lot of other people on Facebook, Twitter,
Yeah.
so many other things, right? How should I, as a graduate of 2020, think about those social media handles and what I put out there? Should I worry about that? Should I not worry about it? What do you have to say?
I think we should be thoughtful about what is my representation as a candidate, because nowadays you are accessible through web. So be mindful about what you present, but an honest representation, like for example, your political views, but what are the right platforms? You're not writing them on LinkedIn. If it is a Facebook, still okay. So be sure about which platform you're using, what you're writing. Those are important awareness which you need to be taken care of. But yeah, those things which definitely recruiter looks into, including the background checks, and a person is definitely, before hiring, these are the platforms which are checked out. So you need to be thoughtful about these.
All right, thank you. So this is a very interesting aspect of the whole interviewing process, which is having my foot in the door the right way, having the right digital presence, making
Yeah.
sure not telling a story, being crisp and specific on my resume, because it is all creating an impression. It's a part of what you said as the ABCD. Now comes the real kicker, which is the interview itself, right?
Yeah.
So Aparna, just transitioning from a CV, from a document stage to a real live conversation. How do I think of my online interviewing skills? One is the online document and the online presence in terms of my views and what I share. What happens when I am asked to interview through a medium like this that we are on right now? What's your suggestion and what's your observation in terms of what's changing from a hiring company standpoint?
Thanks, Vivek. I think what Geeta mentioned as a good segue to what I'm going to say. She said ABCD digitally, and that quickly moves into the next role. With COVID-19 as the fact of life as of now, and with all of us indoors, I think all organizations have moved towards work from home. It's not that many of them have stopped hiring, but a lot of them are still hiring. And if they are hiring, they are using the video conferencing mode most. Now, I've been in this line for quite some time, all my life, actually, 25 years. We've done remote interviews through video conferencing many a times, telephones, video conferencing. But it was an exception then, and today it's become the rule, it's become the norm. So how do I make myself, or how do I prepare for an interview, which I know will not allow me to have a face-to-face interaction, but primarily on a video call. And mastering this art as to how I appear on a video when I'm interviewing is very important. The reason is most of the time the college students, I have my younger kids as well who are going to college, they're always on the net, they're always surfing, they're always playing video games, chatting with their friends, but that's different, right? Now you're getting into a world where you're looking at a career, and how would that be? How would you be perceived by the organization that is interviewing? So, quickly, I think when you transform from a campus to a corporate life, a lot of things change. And one of the first thing is your virtual presence or your virtual identity, which is an email ID. A lot of times when we are in college, we have very fun email IDs. It can be nicknames, it could be alphabets, it could be some names we've given. And I've seen this for myself. My kids had those. And the first thing I asked her to do is, please change that into something formal, because you can't be sending something funny or stupid or gawky to an organization, and that creates the first perception. So how are you seeing on social media, like we spoke about? Similarly, what does your email ID talk about you, right? Keep it simple, just your name, maybe combination of alphabets, numbers sometimes, but be very careful that it's easily identified. Now, to prepare for an interview, I think sitting in front of, just like how we are today talking to each other across the globe, I think you need gadgets, right? So test your technology first. So you need a laptop. Don't take the interview on a phone unless it's absolutely like an emergency and you haven't carried your laptop with you or an iPad with you. Because phones are really small and you may not be able to view properly. You may not be able to be seen properly by your interviewer. So your laptop, it has a great microphone, great. Otherwise, use an external microphone. If you need a headset, check them, make sure they're working. So basically, all your gadgets has to be in working condition and tested before at least 2 days or 1 day before the interview. because you don't want to face a situation. There's always exceptions, but I think we should be more and more prepared.
So,
The third thing I would actually say, set the background. You don't want to be sitting somewhere where there are funny things hanging behind you, or there are children, or your, house guests, or your family members walking around, or your pets, for example, or even if you're taking it in your boarding, in your school, in your hostel. Make sure you have a uninterrupted, quieter place. Background should be such that you are visible, and not the attention of the interviewer should not be going beyond you. Remember that a face-to-face interview is, you have much more advantage. With a nice firm handshake, you create a lot of perception. Here you can't do that. So looking into the camera, making sure you're not distracted and looking everywhere else, being very focused while you are talking. I know all this, we are all aware of it, but sometimes it has to be reiterated. And how it happens is you have to keep telling yourself and practicing in front of a mirror, probably, to see how you look, how are you being seen by the other person, right? It's not fun. Very, very close to that is that how do you want to dress? How do you want to appear? Appropriately dressing is very, very important. You don't want to be seen with a t-shirt or a cap or unkept because you were just playing a game and you wanted to do an interview. It also shows the interviewer what kind of importance, commitment, or accountable you are for this particular job, or how passionate or hungry are you to get this job, right? So I think creating that perception through virtual, video interviewing is critical, and it's all in your hands. You have to do what it takes to make sure you're giving the right impression to your interviewer. While you are speaking, net etiquette or your body language is very important. It's important even on a face-to-face interview. And that is why we keep, your interviewers always watching. It talks a lot, your expressions and how you are seated. If you are relaxed or you're very anxious or you're frowning, all kinds of emotions are portrayed while you're speaking. In a face-to-face, it's much easier, but on a video, you are not even aware of how you are coming across, right? So I think net etiquette, to remember that, full screen, make sure you're talking properly, they're understanding. If you cannot hear them, don't hesitate, take a pause and let them know that you're not able to hear.
So Aparna, can I just quickly interrupt you for a quick second? So while we are talking about all this, how do I know that I'm doing the right things? How important a mock interview becomes in such a scenario?
Very important. And I was just going to go there, is the preparation bit. While you are setting your surroundings, your gadgets, your clothing, your appearance together, I think a mock interview becomes very, very important. So you can practice. There are some typical questions when organizations ask, okay, tell me about yourself. What are your passion? What exactly, what is the aspiration? Where do you want to be, right? What are you looking at from a career? All these kind of questions can come to you in different formats, but you need to be able to, in your thought, like kind of think and speak on your feet. And that comes from a lot of practice, a lot of mock interviews. You cannot just not do anything about it and turn up for an interview. Awesome. I know sometimes it's daunting, but the fact that you've been selected or shortlisted for an interview, you've done a good job. You have been selected. So you have that in you. Now, how to express and communicate that and tell your right story becomes very, very important.
Thank you, Aparna. That's great. That's a lot of good insight. And I think towards the end, I think we are going to share in terms of how this team can also prepare or help the students in doing some mock interviews. Now, we also have a question on Q&A. Let me just quickly make sure that I understand. So this is from Ashmi Nair. Ashmi, thank you for your question. We are going to direct it to the panelists that you have asked towards the end. I just want to encourage everyone to keep sending their questions. So as you move from the interviewing skills, what becomes more important is the content as an interviewee, as a graduate of 2020. So Winston, if I am a fresh graduate coming out of college in 2020, and I don't really have, oh, thank you for your face, by the way. Now we can know who you are. I don't have that much corporate or enterprise or company experience to put on my resume, like Geeta was talking about earlier, right? To be crisp. When I think about the skills that I have acquired during my volunteering days, during my summer jobs, during my projects, how should I think about the balance between technical skills that I have acquired as a part of my curriculum in, let's say, Opijindal, and also the soft skills that are, some of them are taught, they're formal part of the curriculum, and some may be informal part of the curriculum. And just to finish the question, so if I'm, for example, from HR, what are the top questions I have to think about? If I'm from finance, what are the top questions I have to think about? How do I go about this process?
Sure. So I'll begin with a small poetry, a line from a very interesting Lord Tennyson. It's a very old poem. It says, "The old order changeth, yielding place for new." Now, most of us on this call, while we carry with us a lot of experience, the first thing I'd like to leave you with is that we are all learning through this journey, which means interviewers are also perfecting the art of looking at someone, interacting, and figuring out if this is the right person for the job. So I want to begin by telling all my students out there that very often we get asked, is it functional? Is it interpersonal? I think given that the world has changed, these are my views. I think interpersonal skills are becoming very, very important to start with. So for example, I didn't expect to see myself sitting here with a mask, completely unprepared, brought out, but it was important to be patient. And it was important to figure out in the few moments before this call how I would bring things together, right? So before you take an interview, while you will prepare, I want you to focus on things like how in an interview will you showcase yourself as being a person who, for example, is an active listener, is somebody who is willing to pause and share context. One very important personal skill is very often in interviews like this virtual, we have time limits. So for example, do you have your elevator pitch? We will help you, and you should help yourself craft how in about a minute's time you can start by leaving a memory. Now, I'm sure at the end of this call, you might not remember all of us, but you'd possibly remember some of us for certain reasons. Ask yourself, what is my purpose? Do I know what my elevator pitch will be? So I think this is a very, very important part of interpersonal skills. Now, functional is very important, and I'd like to give some examples. So I just did a campus interview for the first time where I spoke to agriculture graduates, and they are sitting in Haryana, and I have absolutely no prior experience. So a lot of interviews are looking for you to be able to open up, but be crisp. Try and share facets of your internship which really mattered, or for example, classroom trainings that really made a difference. So we are helping transform how people buy fresh produce online. A student that caught my attention when I asked them, what is the one thing you want to tell me, someone who does not know the sector, when it comes to packaging of produce? He said, I want you to leave you with this thought that even after harvest, our plants breathe. So when you pack them, you have humidification. That showed me knowledge. I've hired an accountant, and she's a lady that's sitting in Chennai. And I asked her a very open question saying, most of the time HR and finance don't necessarily get along because they are numbers, we have emotion. So my question to her was, how would you be somebody who can help me understand numbers when I don't have a respect for it, right? Very crisp statement. She said, there is one, there is zero, but you learn to live with gray and explain gray. And she gave me an example how when you take stock, it's not easy. So point that I'm going to make is prepare, and I think Geeta spoke about this, sit down, Aparna spoke about it, before an interview, pick those two big differentiators in the functional side where you can very quickly differentiate why they should take a conversation further. Now, that's something that you want to be able to get. This is not the first interview. You're going to have a series of interviews. So get people to start moving from the soft skill, because most youngsters are more tech savvy, much more organized than maybe the older order. start also working on getting them to move towards the functional side, to understand that you're somebody that can do this from a virtual setting. So I leave you with the fact that it's a combination of both. Start with getting people comfortable with who you are, but bring in the power of data. Bring in the power of what you learned in the classroom with live examples, whatever the field.
That's a brilliant example, Winston. Thank you very much. In fact, I remember one of the places when I got hired was not because what I had done in the job, but because what I had done outside my job as a volunteer for something. So I think it's a great reference to what we as graduating students of 2020 need to think about. It's not only about what the job requires us to do and the technical side of future corporate lives, but it's also about as human beings who we are, what defines us, what makes us stand out. I'm just curious though, Anna, you are in New York. How do you see this happening in the investment banking area or the financial services? Because I have been in financial services for 15 years and I have seen things happening multiple ways and evolving, whether it was the financial crisis of 2007-8 and even beyond, right? And I was in the thick of what happened then. But what do you see in the investment banking area in New York at this point?
Thanks, Vivek. Vivek and I went to business school together, and we were in school during 2008, 2009, when it was the biggest financial crisis. I also started my first job as an analyst in JP Morgan Chase. And when I got hired, it was a beautiful economy, but things changed within a few months. And what I can say, and subsequently I moved to restructuring, and what I can say is that crises, they come and go, but business stays and continues. And these days, things are very different with all the technology that we have. And we can do video conferences and interviews via Zoom. And in the financial world and in the investment banking world, this is something very common. Even throughout good times, a lot of the business that people end up doing is with somebody across the globe. It can be in New York and speak to people in California, in Canada, or in Japan, or in Australia. So video conferencing is just a part of the job, and it's very important to have those skills, and starting with the interviews. So for investment banking, what are people looking for? I think it's just like some of the other panelists said, it's very important to be able to have a good story. And it is not only it's who you are as a person, what have you done, how did you move from point A to point B in your life, even in high school or in college. It's important to stay active. What did you do? It's important to list all of your accomplishments. What have you done? Were you engaged in student life, in campus? For example, I was a vice president of my junior class when I was in college. For me, and my story is very unique. I grew up in Bulgaria and I wanted to move to the United States. And it was just right after communism ended, so everything was new, how do colleges work, and it was in the pre-internet era, so I had to write letters to 1,000 places. I had to figure out what they are, and then just send my applications, figure out what to write in those applications, and everything was just so brand new back then. But it is these kinds of things that you have done and the effort that you have put into things in order to take the next step in your life that are very important. And it's very important, as Gita said, to list a lot of the things in your resume and make it crisp and clear and highlight any sorts of achievements or awards you have received. But also when you go to the interview and present yourself, it's very important to make that personal connection and tell your personal story and how you did things.
Yeah, one of the things that I experienced, thank you, Anna. One of the things I also experienced as a part of the financial services, there's a lot of emphasis on analytics, your analytics skills. So in manufacturing, it could be your understanding of how the industrial processes work, machines and mechanical equipment, etc. In a financial services, the margin of profit is in 1 or 2%. In a manufacturing, it could be 30 to 40%. So when you're dealing with 1 or 2% margin, your margin of error reduces dramatically. So the process becomes paramount, and you have to drive a significant amount of process efficiencies. So if you bring those kinds of attributes out in your profile, whether again in your resume or during the interview process, especially if you're appearing for, like Anna was describing, what defines you, whether it's your CV, your resume, or your interview itself, bring those kinds of skills out very specific to the job that you are interviewing for. I know that we are kind of 10 minutes and we had promised we will open up for Q&A. So Pragya, can you summarize what kind of questions should students expect in any kind of a recruitment process in the current environment? How it has
Thanks, Vivek. I hope that after listening to all the panelists, and really, I was very impressed with everyone, as they spoke. I hope the levels of anxiety of all the students have gone down. When Bhuvan talked about, how he went through it when he passed out of ISB. That's a great college, but there was a bad crisis that was happening. Or when Winston's talking about the fact that he's actually doing hiring at this point of time. So I saw a question pop up where a student said, with a lot of hiring freeze that's happening, believe me, there is a silver lining at the end of it. A lot of healthcare companies that are hiring, the investment companies that are hiring, insurance companies, so don't be afraid. I'm sure something will definitely come up your way. There's always a silver lining at the end of it. And as Gaurav said, when he talked about teach, tailor, take control, I wanted to talk to you about this. And I said, this is something which resonates with every recruiter, is what is it that I'm looking for in a candidate? When I go to a campus, and I look at all these energetic, enthusiastic students around me, I want to hire everybody, because this is what every organization looks for. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. But I can't hire everybody, unfortunately. So I look at a certain criteria. So the first thing, what I'd like to help you with is demystify the mind of a recruiter. What is it that they look for? Give you a peep inside. The first thing that they say is, as what Gaurav said, teach. Just be very sure what I am looking for is, what is your level of commitment and expression of interest in the organization? So do your research very well. And then if a question comes up, very generic, question comes up is, tell me something about yourself. So I remember, for an example, I was working with Mentor Graphics at that time, and I was at IIT Kharagpur. And the student, he talked for 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes, when he said, tell me about yourself. 1 minute, he talked about his educational background, everything else. 2 minutes, he helped us understand a software that he wrote for a robotics project that him and his colleagues had gotten together to do on their own. So he told me 2 things. 1 is I can value add to the organization immediately. 2 is I'm an innovator and a self-motivator. Positive signs for a recruiter. Second student that I remember very clearly, she had done her homework and she knew that Mentor Graphics was very passionate, especially in India, about working with NGOs who were associated with underprivileged children. So she talked to us about, when we told her, what is it that you're passionate about? She talked to us about her passion for working with an NGO that was working for underprivileged girl child. She knew, she gave me the message that yes, I'm somebody who can be assimilated in the organization. So very important. Here you are telling me that you're interested in the organization, you've done your homework, and whether it's a functional skill set, as what Winston talked about, or it's a softer skill set, you can sell yourself through this. As what Gaurav said, it's very important for you to sell yourself in that limited time. And that brings me to my second point, which is your communication skills and your clarity of thoughts. Very, very important, as every speaker has talked about. Communication does not necessarily mean your diction or your beautiful English words that you're using. It's all about how clearly you can communicate or sell yourself within that limited time. Very, very important. Third point is, when a lot of speakers have talked about this, is your diversity, especially when Vivek talked about it, that he got this job not because of what he learned in the classroom, but what he done outside. It is very important because all organizations are looking for people who are more evolved. We're not just looking at only at an educational background. It's not just what you've done in your classroom, but what have you done outside it? Have you worked on a project which you've done on your own? Are you an innovator? Have you been associated with an NGO? Are you an empathetic person? Have you been part of the cricket team of the college? Are you a team player? Are you a focused person? Are you a musician? Which means that you have strong listening and learning skills. So anything that you've done, we are looking at all these things that we're doing. So we are looking at people with a lot of diverse skills. And that is something because we believe the more diverse you are, the more value you'll add to the organization. Last but not the least, which I think every speaker has talked about is be honest in whatever you say. As what Geeta said, just be very clear. Do not fudge your resume. Or as what Gaurav and Agna said, write in your resume whatever it is that you can justify and talk about. Very, very important. Believe me, if you do this, and if you look at the mind of try and get into the mind of a recruiter and prepare your answers accordingly, and in the new normal, prepare your answers through trying it on video meetings, like Aparna said.
Yeah.
Every question will have an answer. I mean, Google is giving you n number of questions that a recruiter can answer. But every question will have the answer if you understand these few things about the company. Do your research, look at the job description. Do your research, look at the job description. Basics. Do this and you will crack every interview. And I'm sure about it. And good luck to all the students.
Thank you, Pragya. That was very insightful again. Also, Mr. Mohan, I would like to invite you now before we actually go to the questions, or at least tell us in terms of what do you see as the challenges facing our graduating class of 2020 that we also need to think about as analysts and also experts who can help the students.
Yeah, great. Quickly, as before I get in, we also have with us our senior professor and director for Officer Career Services, Mr. Dr. Asim Talukdar. I'm sure he should be there. He's also one of our colleagues, and also I have Divita as well with me. This is one. The other challenge, what I could understand from our students' interaction is, they are not just nervous, but they are very demotivated with the kind of system, with the kind of process that's happening. There is business, there is hiring, but it's on hold. There is business, there have been offers given, there has been assurance given, but then it's not happening. Interview process happening, but then they don't know the result. They won't know whether they are in or out, so they can plan for other things. The third is that a lot of uncertainty everywhere, and they are unable to decide what to do next. Should they start scaling up again, reskilling, or do they wait for the result and do? That's number one challenge. Second is that we have identified few long-term internships and we made them do that so that they are engaged. Otherwise, they are completely lost and they are really unable to think and understand, though they are doing very good at academics. Number two. Number three, for the guys who already got selected, fortunately, we got date extended, but not offers denied. That's a real great thing. So these are a couple of the challenges, and the new challenge is that they wanted to know from you, from the business practitioners, how do they really, while waiting, what do they do other than skilling? What do they really have to really consider doing, or say not just visibility, but then how do they plan? How do they plan to move forward and still being very active and very assertive? Yeah, these are a couple of the challenges.
2-3 things I'll say from my personal experience as well. There are things we control, there are things we don't.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we can't change that reality.
Yeah.
The virus is real, but we also know from prior history that mankind has always won over such difficult situations. Otherwise, we would not have existed. We would not be hosting this webinar.
Yeah.
Right? We would have been long extinct. So if I put these two things together, as long as we stay positive, we do not let this virus play with our minds more than anything else, we will come out successful. It is a very difficult situation. I can tell you my experience. I had an offer made to me a few months ago and it was pulled. I was given the verbal offer, but I was not given the written offer. And I know of at least 3 other people, same thing happened to them. What I do know at the same time is it is temporary. 2, what I also know, I can continue to improve. I actually enrolled in a program with MIT, which was human computer interaction for UX design. I just completed my program. So I did not stop my pursuit of excellence. I did not stop my pursuit of staying relevant. Nothing stops me from pursuing how do I become better and better? Because when the floodgates open, I should be the one leading the charge. I don't want to react to the market. I want to stay ahead of the market. There will be a lot of hiring which will be seemingly frozen. There will be a lot of companies. The companies are themselves in a state of flux. They don't know which way, what's the north anymore, right? Their strategy is in shambles. What was strategic in December has suddenly become redundant in July, August. So the whole world, when your frames of reference are changing, obviously you have to adapt. So let me take to Varnita Rastogi's question. He's saying, if a person is looking out for a job in HR, in talent acquisition, and now there are no openings available, should a person consider a change in career? My personal answer is, I don't call it change, reinforce it. Reinforce it. There are things you can do which will still add value to your pursuit of a role within HR. Example, if you think of a Match.com algorithm today, and I'm using that just as an example. If you're doing a talent acquisition, at some point in your career, you will require to match available talent, available human capital to the kind of jobs that are required. What kind of skills would be required in the future, which are tech-enabled? For example, do you know enough about artificial intelligence? Do you know enough about machine learning? As we move more towards a digital world in the future, whether it is HR or finance, investment banking, or simple marketing and sales, everything will have a digital component to it. The question is, do I have the skills to be staying relevant and employable for that future? And by the way, that future is not far off. We're talking about weeks and months here. So Mr. Mohan, my response to Varnita and all the students of 2020 is, look at ways, think ahead of the obvious. It's easy to get into a shell. It's easy to read and prepare for the obvious. It's harder, but that's what gives us the competitive edge. Like Winston was talking about the person who educated him on why it is humidifying when you compress the cut plants. That's what we need. We need people with a little bit of an edge who can think beyond the rest of the crew. So I don't know, Mr. Mohan, if that helps or not, but that's what our vantage point tells us is going to help the students of 2020. And I'm trying to answer your specific question, right? How do they respond to uncertainty? The only way to respond to uncertainty is by controlling what is certain. And what is certain is me as an individual and what I can do with this individual. It is hard. You have to wait it out. We have to wait it out. But I would love to hear from Gaurav. I mean, do you have any views in terms of how are we dealing with uncertainty right now, especially for these young students? What can we do more of?
Yeah, no, so the first thing I'd like to tell the students is that if you don't have a life plan at this moment, you're okay. You're like the rest of us, right? At this stage in your lives, with your careers laid out in front of you, I think there is only one way you guys will go, which is upwards. So don't bring on too much uncertainty and anxiety of the future to forget that you're still coming through a very, very tough crisis and graduating, and graduation in itself is a big change. And on top of that, with everything that's going on, I think you guys should applaud yourself and pat yourself on the back for a job well done, right? But here's my little 2 cents on what I think is required, right? And what is required is that you guys have to be proactive in terms of identifying and starting to think about, which are the sectors that will expand and grow, because employability and economy are very tightly coupled to each other, right? And it is, you guys are business graduates, so I'm assuming that you guys have had some previous work experience before you came in and took your management degree. Even if you don't, I would highly advise that as you've gone through your learning program on campus, you have already started to look at it as problem solving. So I think that is the same approach you should take to job hunting, which is to identify, which are the sectors that will stay in the new economy, what are the skills that those sectors would require, and what are the wish list of companies that exist in those sectors, right? And like I said, then after that, you should be very prolific in going out and seeking as many conversations with people that you know or that could help get you introduced into those companies. Um, uh, but really, if any one of us has to look at it, it will be a crystal ball gaze, and everybody will approach it in a different way. But if you take the problem-solving approach, if you put the analysis together, you will be able to find out options. And then, of course, there is so much other parallel learning, like everybody on the panel has been talking about. MOOC, everything today is become accessible because every university, every forum has gone online to reach out to their audience, right? I was talking to somebody the other day. There is a 3-week course that the Rahman Music Academy does in Chennai, which is only a resident program. But this year was the first time that they moved that online as well. So, imagine that the 30 people that could actually originally do that program on the Rahman Music Academy now is more like 300. So there is a lot of opportunity. Keep looking at that. Don't get anxious. Don't put yourself on a stopwatch. I don't think that is the right way to think about the future. And always remember that the future is always more clearer in hindsight. So with that, I'd leave it at that and wish you all the best once again.
Thank you, Gaurav. So, Mr. Mohan, I'm also very curious. What I've heard, and I know you are the right person to answer this. OP Jindal has a very formidable, very strong recruitment support process. You host a lot of companies. You have got years of experience. And this is something, as an outsider, we know that you have a very strong reputation when it comes to helping the students get on with their career paths. What is your view in terms of how should the business practitioners also consider what's making the students anxious?
So as we always say to our students about having plan B, in case one doesn't work, A doesn't work, B works. I think corporates also have to look at what works, if not this. What are the alternatives, number one. Number two, quick to take action. Though they know that it's taking a little longer, how do we respond then? What are the options that we have and how do we quickly respond? Because that response time is taking a little longer time. Because when you talk about maturity, when you talk about handling business, I think we should be able to really do it. What really worries us is that the well-established companies are not doing much, but then small-timers, startups, and then newcomers are able to sustain this. So we were also thinking that, why do we look at big companies on this to join? Why don't we support people who are able to sustain COVID or sustain during this pandemic? So we are also getting such kind of ideas, such kind of thoughts. And we will educate our students about, look, this is a challenge, but then see how market responds. Though it is very dynamic, but then we never expected this kind of dynamism. A small timer able to provide jobs. A new setup is able to really sustain business and make profits. So it's a challenge everywhere, even for us. So we are learning. We also learn every day. And I also came from business to academics. So it's a good learning, and also we really wanted to appreciate the change. But then today's discussion, it was really wonderful. I'm sure our students will really take a lot of insights from this. And we are very optimistic about the situation overall. Yes.
Here's something which we are going to promise today. What we are going to do, and I'm taking this on behalf of EdMyst, that we will do another session to help your students with their CVs. What we can offer to the students, and this has got no charge at all, send us your CV. We will do a little evaluation internally, and we will do personal session with them and help them understand what it would require to kind of beef them up and make them better. That's one. Second, highlighting and summarizing our observations from all the resumes so that that conversation focuses specifically on what Pragya was talking about, on what kind of questions to expect, Then Geeta talked about what to put on a CV, how to come across digitally. And then Aparna talked about the video part of it. So we'll want to make sure from the CVs that we get from OP Jindal, we will do the back-end research. We will first help those students who will volunteer to send their resumes. And second, we will address another session like this where we will talk about things that we observed on the resumes, and we will share the best practices, if that's okay with you.
Sure, certainly. Sounds great.
Yeah, right. Now, let me also make sure that we are addressing the 3 questions. So there is a specific question, Geeta, for you. What has been your experience while looking for talent during this COVID pandemic? Are there any new changes or traits that you look for? This has come from Ashmi.
Thank you for the question. In fact, when I started answering my previous question, I said things have not changed. Fundamentals remain same. And obviously the requirements, when we look for people, there is no whole lot of change which has happened. But yeah, something which is important is we look for people who are more flexible, who are more adaptable, who can manage, specifically who can work in the virtual environment, who can manage remote teams. The softer part of it, people who have humility, who have empathy in these times. I think these are some of the competencies which have started gaining more importance. Technical expertise, obviously, that can't take a backseat. Those are important things, but the softer side of it is also important in terms of what things which I just mentioned. Hope this helps.
Thank you, Geeta. And Ashmi, if you want to have a more follow-up conversation, feel free to reach out to us. And we will get on a one-on-one conversation. We will help you understand even more. There is a second question which come from Raghu. I think it is a brilliant question. And it is very real in terms of the current situation. He's asking, given the pandemic and a lot of emphasis on work from home, there are still some companies from his experience, he says 4 out of the 5 companies still required him to join physically in an office location. And he said it is a deal breaker for him because moving to a new location during the pandemic does not make sense. And I agree with him. I would not do that myself. So then how does a candidate convince a recruiter that he is the right candidate for the job, but clearly he's not willing to move due to the outbreak? And Raghu, I'm assuming it's only because of the outbreak, and there are no other mobility restrictions you have, right? So why don't we turn to Aparna? Aparna, do you have any view, because you have dealt with a lot of global capability centers, and there are people who are more mobile, and then there are people who are less mobile. And now, given the pandemic, you are yourself under house arrest, right, within your own confines. How do you deal with a situation like this, where a recruiter is actually compelling the candidate to move and join in some place?
I think in this scenario, let's come to it's a negotiation deal that he has to talk about. See, one is there is no 2 ways about it that staying home is the best thing to do. But probably the business analyst role, if it requires you maybe a day a week, maybe he can go there, or given kind of find out why is the recruiter insisting on him to be in the office. Is there a specific reason for it? Is there a customer meet that he has to attend? So in those scenarios, Raghu, you can probably choose to have a detailed discussion as to, I'm sure no organizations will force you or not give you a job in today's scenario where you cannot, when you're not willing to come to work. There are organizations, and he's right, that have not announced work from home for everybody. There are some, customer facing, or there are some possible roles where people are going into work. But most of the organizations are not putting a hard and fast rule, right? So I think it's better. It's very difficult for me to probably say what the reason was, but I could give a few advice. Talk it out with the recruiter. Talk to the hiring manager. If you are really good at your work that you do, I'm sure the company won't let you go. They will give you an option, and you can work with them saying that maybe I can work 2 days. I can come to work for 2 days or half a day, at least whenever required. But most of the time I will be at home. So coming to a win-win situation probably may help. But if you're very, very sure that no, you don't want to get out from work, then I guess you have to look for a job which allows you to work from home. So, I mean, there is both ways, no hard and fast rules.
Understood. Mr. Mohan, I have a question for you actually to what Aparna said. Do these companies, are they coming to the campuses even in a pandemic to do this recruitment, or it is being done online?
It's all virtual.
It's all virtual?
Yeah,
so,
even we are online. We are also working online. No student is on campus.
So which is why I'm a little surprised. If the companies are hiring online, virtually interviewing, how are they expecting the candidates to travel and join physically in some other location? In that situation, Mr. Mohan, do you think the students can actually seek your help, force the negotiation?
Yes. In some cities, there is some relaxation. So some corporates are functioning. So some are working weekly twice, some are thrice, something like that. So they expect students also to work, but then not possible. So we are also talking to them and making them understand. If you choose the candidate, as Aparna said, they need to wait, and they have the confidence about the student skill set. They have to give option, working from home, and maybe a little later joining them. Yes, I do agree. It might take some time because all of a sudden there is hiring now. We are seeing here and there. So they wanted to have a normal kind of life, which is not possible.
Okay. Winston, you had a point, and you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, so I wanted to share the business view on this. And as we speak, I've actually got a lady to travel from Chennai in lockdown and take up a job. Now, with all humility, I'd like to tell students that it's important that you also understand what's required in a job. Okay. Now, I had a conversation and I asked the kids' parents. So I explained to the kids' parents what was important in the job, right? And I shared with the parents what we were doing to ensure her security when she came here. So the only message I have to most of the college students is to understand why some jobs sometimes might have to be done in the location. So I run farms. I'm not sure how we can sustain over a long period of time. And we need people to make that safe transition in the current environment. Now, if I look at one interpersonal skill, I'm looking at leadership. The willingness to do what's right. For me, safety can never be compromised. So getting an e-pass, moving at the right time and holding the company accountable to getting the kid in a secure place. And this is something where I'm seeing there's a lot of panic. Students who have offers are also backing out, right? So there are both sides to it. Students, recruiters should come together and understand how we can both make a hand clap at the end of the day. That's my experience. I thought I'll share. I've not yet gone to meet her. I'm actually stuck far from her, but I will find it in my power today to go and at least see her late in the night and say, hey, you're safe with me. By the way, she's brought her father and mother with her, which completely blew me away. And this is the new normal that we talk about. So kids who have offers, don't get frightened. It's about showing how together we will overcome this, but don't just back out because you're saying, I'm worried about my safety. Define what are you worried about, and we'll talk.
Thank you, Winston. I think that's pretty relevant, especially in the current situation. So Raghu has another follow-up question, which again is a very interesting one. He says that they're looking at a candidate who has all possible soft skills and hard skills. So they're looking at a person who can code in Python, in R, in SAS, ML, AI, Tableau, Power BI. He's just given a few names. So it seems the companies want everything in one individual. So Pragya, what I think Raghu is getting to is the companies are looking, when they fill out a job description, they're wanting every skill under the sun in this person, which is obviously not possible. How can you position yourself and make sure you're still able to navigate a very vague and a fluffy job description?
So yes, I do get asked this question, pretty often when I'm visiting the campus, when people do ask me. And say, so for example, Raghu, when you're looking at a business analyst description or a job role or a JD and the skill sets that are needed, what they have done is in the job role, because you're a fresher, you need not have experience with everything. They've put all the possible tools that a BA might be using. What is important for you to know, and when you're appearing for the interview, is you tell them that at least 2 tools I'm very good at. because you do not know which organization you're going to end up with and what is it that they're going to be using. So at least 2 tools that you're very, very good at, which you have really researched and studied during your academic period, and all the others you should have exposure to. Because you cannot be a master at everything. And you can be very clear to them about this and tell them that these are 2 things that I know. The concepts of business analytics and the concepts of all these tools are similar. It's just the way that you write it, the commands in those particular languages is what differs from one to the other. But the concept is the same. The algorithm is the same. So if you know that, you can easily pick up any other language. So it's not difficult at all. What you have simply to do is just be pro at a few things and just know about the other things, and you'll crack the interview. As long as they know that you understand what it means.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Pragya. There were a couple of other questions. One is from Shivani. Actually, both are from Shivani. She's talking about, for an HR student, how are the corporates responding to hire fresh talent? And then also, probably this was more for you again, Pragya, which is, which candidate in your viewpoint would have more competitive advantage? The one with more internship experiences on their resume, or the one who has developed better interpersonal skills? I think both are brilliant questions.
It's a very, very good question, I would say, Vivek, a very good question. Frankly speaking, it's not, one way or the other. What I'm looking at is when I'm coming into the campus to be hiring people, I'm looking at both the things. Because especially during these pandemic times when the positions are also limited, I would need a combination of both the things. Somebody who's got enough relevant internship experiences, who has a corporate exposure, who understands how it works, and who knows what the processes are like. But at the same time, even if you have the internship experiences, but you don't have the interpersonal skills, it's not going to help you grow in any organization. So balance between both these things is very, very important as you are studying, as what we have all talked about during all our discussions during this entire seminar is, how is it that you do a balance between your functional and your interpersonal skills? Both these things are very, very important. Winston also talked about it. Gaurav talked about it. Bhuvan talked about it. Everybody talked about it. And Vivek, as he said, what you study within the organization or to do outside. So try and work on both these things. Do not focus on only one. The more diverse you are, the more employable you are.
Thank you, Pragya. Aparna, you had something to say on this.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to what Pragya is saying. It's true in both, but I would prefer personally tell you that focus more on your personal skills, because usually organizations hire for potential and hire for future. You can learn that particular business and also look at your internships, how relevant are they to that organization. But if you have better interpersonal skills, you know that it's a long way. You can go much longer. Business context, technology, technical skills, the organization could help you develop them. But attitude, good behavior, communication, they want students to hit the ground running. They want to hire you and be, productive day one. And then you have further future with the organization, because most of the organization I personally hired for more potential. If you don't know your job, I'll teach you the job, but I cannot teach you attitude. I can teach you communications, but I can guide you. I can coach you to be better. But if you already come with a few and prepare yourself before an interview, that holds much more impetus.
So, okay, thank you, Aparna. Shivani, you can unmute yourself and then go ahead. You had something to say.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so basically agreeing to Aparna ma'am's points, and sorry for the Pragya ma'am's point. I just wanted to say that yes, I have interned 2 times, like 3 times with the organization, and I have enough known about myself. and I know where I lack and what are the good points and additional points in me. So in this pandemic situation, I would rather like to focus more on my interpersonal skills. So is that better to represent to a recruiter and you would be accepting more of that, or a person who is adding more experiences of internships in their CVs at this point of time?
So my take on this is, Shivani, it is neither one or the other. It's actually a combination of both. And if and I have interviewed almost between I would say easily 5 to 7,000 people during my last 30 years. What I look for is as a person as a whole. It's not I look for one dimension. I look for what value the person brings. So if in your skill, I'll just give you an example. I was hiring someone for an analyst role, a hardcore data analyst role. And this person, he started talking about how he is doing internships in real estate properties. Okay. Now I asked him, so tell me, what do you do in your real estate? And he started talking about selling, how he sells, how he prepares the portfolio. I said, how do you use data? He did not use data at all. He says, why do I need to use data? What do you think told me? He had made a lot of money in his internship because he earned all those commissions in his real estate deals. He was doing really well. And he was very polished, very, very good speaker. And he had a lot of skills that were required for the job that I was looking to hire for. But one thing I wanted to hire for was data analyst. But he said, why is data important? What do you think happened to after that? When he told me that, what do you think I did with that interview? So it's always what is core to the job. How do you build around that job? If I'm looking for a data analyst and you tell me you're learning music, it's fine. As long as you tell me that you're really good as a data analyst, as long as you tell me that you're also using data to understand music. You have to connect my core requirement with what skills you bring, right? So that makes the whole, it's not one dimension or a one skill I'm hiring anyone for, Shivani. What I'm hiring for, Shivani as a person who can add value, who can make me look good, and who can make me successful, more successful in my job. So don't think like a candidate. Think like the person who's hiring the candidate. What is that person interested in? Why should I hire Shivani? If she learns music, great. If she learns flying a plane, fantastic. The question is she as an employee of my team or a team member in my organization, is she going to make me more successful? And how so? Because if learning music and learning how to fly a plane makes you a more well-rounded individual, I would actually love it. I would like, and I think Aparna had said it before, and Pragya said the same thing. The more diversity you bring, we know for a fact, it's better, for the collaboration, for the ecosystem in general, how we operate as a team. So does that answer, Shivani?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Thank you. Winston, you were going to
Thank you
say
so
something. I know you were raising your hand because I think, Shivani, this question is very good and very topical, by the way.
So I was just
Thank
going
you
to,
so much.
I was just going to say, I'm going to drop off, but I wanted to say that we are all learning. As a recruiter, I'm not prepared. I'm looking for the talent to show me the way. I'm being very honest, very candid, right? I think a lot of recruiters are like me. We are humble. We're looking to you to show content, to show commitment, and show leadership in this moment of trial of. And you know what? This too shall pass, right? That's the only reason why humans control the earth, if I may say that in a very light manner. Tell us how we can help you. While I drop off, there's a set of professionals here who really believe that we want to represent our communities through this organization. That's the only way we can collaborate. If not, we're all going to be trying to shoot in different directions. So as I end, I'm going to say thank you to everybody who took the time, and we are here for you.
So thank you, Winston. I think that's a great note to end. And I'll also like to wrap up. This too shall pass. I think brilliantly summarized. I think it's important for the graduating class of 2020, recognize change, recognize it's changing. It's not the same. Get personal. Get personal about you. Don't worry about what's happening around you. How am I supposed to respond to this change is more important than the change itself, right? Stay ahead of the recruitment process. Don't react. You lead the recruitment in your direction. Invest in self-awareness. Become self-aware of who you are as a person. and invest in development and make sure that you're accessing the quality resources. These are the 3-4 things that I took away. Mr. Mohan, this could not have been possible without you. So thank you very much for allowing us to share what we thought was really topical. We are very passionate about this subject because we, in some direct or indirect way, we are all connected with people who are trying to make a change in themselves. Then if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us at support@edmyst.com. And we will make sure that we will respond. And Mr. Mohan, our offer stands. For all the CVs that we receive, we will do there is no cost involved, just because we believe and we are passionate about this cause. We are going to do a full evaluation, talk to the students one-on-one. And then we'll also do a follow-up webinar where we are going to share some of the common observations on resumes.
Sure.
Any closing thoughts, Mr. Mohan?
Yeah, that's good. Really wonderful. I had lengthy discussion with Ajay as well before we talking, and then we had multiple discussions in the last couple of weeks, and then we said that okay, let's go ahead with this. But it turned out to be a fantastic evening today, for you morning. It was really wonderful to know so many panelists, and all of them were having close to 2 decades of experience, all of them. So it's wonderful, and then I'm sure there are a lot of takeaways, not just a couple of them, and it's more insightful and more meaningful for our students. Going forward, they will really appreciate and also will incorporate the points that you have suggested. They are really very good. Some of them really hit me as well, because yes, there are things, there are situations that we need to understand and move on, not just to get carried away. Yeah, so great from our side. Yeah, it's been wonderful evening, and then it's good, and we look forward for many such interactions. And then yes, there's a lot of value addition. I could see that.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, and especially the panelists. I know we have gone way over time, but I think it was so rich in its content. I just could not have stopped it abruptly. And glad that the technology was on our sides as well. So.
Yeah.
And I've also put the chat on the chat. Feel free to reach out at support@edmyst.com if there are any follow-up questions. So especially the attendees and then the students who asked those questions, Ashmi, Raghu, Shivani, and if I'm forgetting any name, so sorry about that. But every question was brilliant. And please stay positive and wish you all good luck. Thank you.
Avarnita also has done, and also I thank everyone. Thanks all the panelists, Geeta, Bhuvan, Aparna, Pragya, Winston, all of them, Anna, and even Gaurav Sabine. So it was wonderful interacting with you, and we look forward to have many such interactions.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, participants. Thank you, panel.